What's up, folks? Welcome to Ichabod. I switched to the evening because I did the poll and you all were saying, most of y'all were saying, evening is better. So we're going to see what the attendance is like. I know there's a lot of shows that you guys want to check out. So sometimes you catch me live and catch somebody else on the record. Sometimes you catch me on record. But I'm glad you guys are here tonight. We are diving back into the series, part 3 of God and Animal Suffering. Imagine there was no story. Imagine there was never a story to explain why there's pain and suffering. And then for the first time, even though we all had the question, imagine someone came to you and tried to explain to you why there's sin and death, why there's pain and suffering, and they told you the story that you find in the Bible. How sufficient would a story like that be? How receptive would you be to the story? What questions would you have? And what would be left unanswered if they told you the reason why there's pain, whether it be emotional, whether it be psychological, whether it be physical, is because God told two people thousands of years ago. And when I say thousands, we're talking hundreds of thousands of years ago, that if they did something this God didn't like, hundreds of thousands of years later, there would still be creatures on the earth living a life of pain and suffering because of the decision that they made. How satisfactory would that be for you? And what I've been suggesting in this series is that the biblical story is woefully insufficient in explaining. We can talk about human suffering, and maybe we'll get there at some point. Right now, we're just talking about animals. Why do animals have to suffer the way that they do? Does the biblical story explain that well? Or does naturalism do a better job? In a series like this series doesn't do much for people who are not very fundamentalist. When I say fundamentalist, I mean, if you read the Bible and you try your best to take it as literally as you can, the biblical story doesn't do much for answering these kinds of questions. Because while it tells you a story, it leaves out so much of our experience, or even if not our experience, meaning humans, so much of the experience on earth is left out by the biblical story. Imagine oysters or any creature that likes to find for itself a shell as a house to live in. Sometimes when you see oysters, you look at them and you say, oh, you might, if you didn't know better, you might think that the shell is actually part of the animal. But no, the oyster found the shell, moved into it, and then as it grew, it says, wait, this shell, I need more room. This is not big enough for me. And so it comes out of that shell and it goes and it finds another one. There are other creatures that actually, they grow with their shell. So turtles, right? As they grow, their shell grows with them. There are others like crabs. They have a shell, but as they grow, they molt. They shed that shell and they grow a new one. The thing that you realize as you deconstruct from your faith, and especially as you deconvert, what you realize is the story that you were told about why the world is the way that it is. As you grow, that story doesn't really grow with you. And as you start, I don't know what happens first. I don't know whether it's intellectual concerns, sexual concerns, ethical concerns, sociological concerns. The more you grow, the more you start realizing that the shell of religious faith, especially the Bible and especially a fundamentalist understanding of it, that shell is not big enough to house the experience that we find here. And you outgrow it. You can't spend the rest of your life walking around trying to fit all of your concerns into the shell of Christianity. And so you, at some point, I would hope, you outgrow it. And I hear from many of you all the time, you say, I'm 50 years old and I can't believe it took me this long, but I realized I had to outgrow that shell. The progressive Christian is the person who's trying to make the shell grow with them. They might use Paul's analogy and they might say, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child. So they might look at someone like me and say, oh, I was once like you. I was once a fundamentalist, but I outgrew that. Now I grew into a more progressive understanding of Christianity. And in this progressive form, I can accept homosexuals. I can even accept trans people. Or I could, I used to be this kind of a voter. Now I'm this kind of a voter. They try to make their faith grow with them. But I would suggest to you that what you're really doing is you're outgrowing your Christianity. Slowly, painfully, and a lot of times unnecessarily painfully. Like, rather than trying to have it grow with you, maybe outgrowing it and maybe realizing that shell can't fit you anymore is the way to go. So with that in mind, we're going to move. We did insects the last two series, part 1 and part 2. We looked at the insect kingdom, and we didn't even scratch the surface. To be honest, all we did was I pulled up just a few examples just to show you how bugged life is in the animal kingdom, in the insect kingdom, because Genesis chapter 1, around verse 20, talks about God saying, let the all the creeping things that creep along the ground, God made them. And when you look at those creeping things and you look at how they get down, you look at how they reproduce. You have mantis biting the heads off of their mate while they're reproducing. You look at how they attract and prey on other animals. So they're disguising themselves with the dead body parts of animals that they've already eaten and using that to go and consume other animals. They're liquefying and burning their prey with gases and all like, did a wise, good God say, and let there be that? Or do you say no? Sin entered the world, and sin somehow gave these insects the instinct and the ability and the body parts and the chemical concoctions to liquefy their prey. Like, that's a crazy thing. Either way, either option is crazy. If God designed them to do that, God is psychotic. But if God didn't design them to do that, and then sin entered the world, and then they started doing it, you still have to step back and say, damn, like, wait, what? God in his wisdom and creativity and goodness and power and omniscience knew that sin would come into the world, and as a result, insects would be liquefying their prey and burning them alive with chemicals and eating them. And God was like, yeah. Well, that was the insect kingdom. Now in part 3, we're going to look at, I call this one Under the Sea, because we're going to look at just a few of the examples of what happens under the sea. And I had many, many more. And this is the crazy thing about this. In this series, I had a bunch of videos that I was going to be looking at. The good things, so I got good news and bad news. The good news is I had already downloaded and converted all of the land animal videos. So they're good. The bad news is I was waiting to do the ocean videos, and the program that I use to convert videos because Facebook is like, I don't know what they're doing. Y'all tell me if y'all are still able to get videos off of Facebook. I used to be able to just download videos off of Facebook and play them immediately. Can't download off of Facebook anymore, not on my phone, not on my desktop. So now I've got to download them and then convert them in a different program. Well, now whatever Facebook is doing in their coding, I can't even convert videos off of Facebook anymore. So that's why I was so late getting online today, is because I was trying to convert these videos and I'm like, I can't even. So I was able to convert just a few of the ocean videos. So I don't even have the full index of ocean videos that I want to get to. So all that to say, I apologize for not having all the vids I want to get to, but I got some that we are going to be able to watch. So that being the case, I do want to take a second and give a shout out to some folks. Thank you to all of the Patreon supporters. Thank you for everybody who has joined the Patreon. If you have not joined the Patreon, if I'm not mistaken, I think, Pragmatic Crystal has dropped the links up above in the live chat, and I will put them under the description of the video. But yes, much love. Thank you to all you guys for supporting the channel. And definitely want to get some more folks in there. But if you just do me a favor and like the episode while we're here, that would be much appreciated. Like the episode, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and we will dive in. All right, so first things first, before we get to the videos, I want to share just an image of what's happening under the sea. So the first image I want to try to check out is a sea squirt. I didn't even know this existed. This is a sea squirt. All right. I was going to say crazy, but the sea squirt would probably be offended by that, because to the sea squirt, it's not crazy. It's just it's a sea squirt. But the sea squirt does something that's very interesting. It eats its own brain. This is how the sea squirt lives its life. When they're young, they swim freely through the ocean, using a simple brain and nervous system to navigate the world. But once they find a permanent spot, often attaching themselves to coral, they undergo a dramatic transformation. They digest their own brain. Why? Because they don't need it anymore. So there are certain animals that are, remember I talked about the leaf sheep. The leaf sheep is one of the few animals in the world that are able to get energy directly from the sun. They do photosynthesis just like plants. So there's some animals that are called heterotrophs. I'm sorry, they're called autotrophs. Autotrophs is they make their own energy, their own food from energy sources without having to consume other animals. That's autotrophs. Most of the animals that we're going to look at are heterotroph, meaning they have to get their energy from other things. I don't know if the sea squirt is considered autotroph because it's getting its energy from eating itself. Like it digests its own brain. Once it realizes, like, okay, I floated around the ocean, I found the coral that I want to attach myself to, and once I get there, I don't need my brain anymore because I was using it to navigate to this coral. Now that I'm here, I don't need my brain anymore. And so it digests its own brain. Once in a fixed place, the sea squirt stops swimming with no need to process movement or sensory input. Their nervous system is broken down and absorbed. It's one of the strangest examples of biological efficiency. If you're not using it, recycle it. So maybe you say to yourself, God in his wisdom and his creativity and design said, I'm going to make this sea squirt. I'm going to give it the ability to realize that it doesn't need its nervous system anymore. It said, so, okay, thank you, my unique. Monique says, Google says that the sea squirt is heterotroph. How is it heterotroph if it's eating itself? Well, I guess hetero doesn't necessarily mean other creatures. It just means it's not making its own energy. It's getting its energy from something else. But autotroph is you're getting your energy from, I don't know. That's interesting. I have to look into that. Okay. Thank you for that. All right, one more image, and then we'll go to the videos. This one is crazy. I showed this one before, but not in the sea. I showed it on land. But check out what this thing does in the sea. This is crazy. All right, so this is the parasitic flatworm. We looked at what it does, I think, to spiders last time. But look at what it does to shrimp. The parasitic, this is crazy, y'all. I don't know if you've ever heard anything like this before. The parasitic flatworm, I almost can't even read it. This is so crazy. It replaces a shrimp's testicles with its own larva. You heard me right. This flatworm replaces a shrimp's testicles with its own larva. Now check this out. This shrimp is mating, but its offspring will never be its own. Why? Because parasitic flatworms invade crustaceans through contaminated water. They bypass the digestive system, navigate through muscle, and head directly for the gonads. So somehow this flatworm knows what it's looking for. I don't want the muscle. I'm not going in the digestive tract. I'm aiming for the gonads. Once inside, listen to this, y'all. Listen, this is crazy as hell. Or crazy as heaven if you think God designed it. Once inside the gonads, they release chemicals that shrink the testicles. Talk about shrinkage. That shrink the testicles, then dissolve them. The flatworm fills the cavity with its own developing larvae. The shrimp remains active, still performing mating rituals, still attempts to copulate. So the shrimp is still going to get off what it's got to get off. Doesn't realize that it's there's no sperm or whatever. Like all the sperm is gone. The flatworm has released a chemical, dissolved the sperm, and then filled that cavity with its own larvae. So instead of delivering sperm, when the shrimp is getting off, it spreads eggs from the parasite. Then the host becomes a vector. Its reproductive future is replaced by the larva from the flatworm. So you got to ask yourself, is this a God's grand design to have a shrimp look for a mate, but before it finds a mate, it's somehow infested or invaded by this flatworm? The flatworm shrinks the gonad, the testicles, dissolves the sperm, puts its own. Did God in heaven look at this and say, perfect? Like, that's exactly what I want happening. God designed, or did sin somehow enter the world and cause the flatworm to malfunction and now start messing up how shrimp reproduce? Is that what God, like, did God say, damn, I wish that wasn't going to happen, but hey, they sinned, so now, sorry shrimp, you gotta deal with this now. Like I said before, naturalism does a much better job. Like, what we are looking at is chemistry that became biology. And what do living things want to do? Living things want to keep living. Living things want to reproduce. Living things want to conserve their own energy. Like, this is just lifing in some of the weirdest, most wondrous, surprising, sometimes disgusting Wait, like this is just lifing. I was bugging y'all out the other day when I was talking about memory and time and where is yesterday. One of the things I think about often that bugs me out is like we're so surprised that we are what we are. Like, how is it that I'm able to speak and you can hear me? Not just the technology that we've come up with, but just the fact that we've developed language and we can ask questions and want answers and know. And we think to ourselves, the fact that we've become what we are, doesn't all this show that there must have been a plan? There must have been a designer. And as a Christian, I think it would have been crazy for me to say what I'm going to say right now. But I've grown so much more comfortable with the idea of no, this doesn't have to be designed. We are an example of what the universe can do. This is in the same way that the flatworm replaces the sperm of a shrimp to reproduce itself and find a host. These are just the amazing things that life can do. Like I find myself amazed at what life is doing, and that the thing that I call me, the I that I'm referring to, that I am what I am. This is what the universe is doing. I don't know the why. I don't know the how. But here we are. If I had to try to put all this under the guise of this is what a God is doing, I don't know how to make sense of a God who thought that this would be such a great idea. Even if you want to blame it on sin. Like this wasn't really God's idea, but this is sort of what God, like this is his plan B. Well, no, there's a verse in the Bible that says Jesus is the lamb slain before the foundations of the world. So you can't say God didn't want this to happen. God didn't plan for this to happen. If the Bible is true, all of this freaky stuff that we're talking about is God's bright idea. Before the world, before the foundation of the world, Jesus is the lamb slain. So it's not the thing that we used to often say as Christians. As Christians, we would often say this. We would say Jesus had to die because mankind sinned. But no, if he's the lamb slain before the foundation of the world, it's not he had to die because we sinned. It's we had to sin because he died. Like God was planning to do that regardless. And so because he wanted a lamb slain and bloodshed and to glorify himself in the ways that the Bible depicts, oh, well then the man had to sin. All of these horrific things that we see happening in our world had to happen. Why? Because he was the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. That was God was seeking a problem for a solution, not a solution for a problem. That's a weird way to think about what you're finding in the Bible, but God came up with a solution first. I'm going to glorify myself. I'm going to slay a lamb. And now I need a problem that fits that solution. That's crazy to me. I used to praise a God for that. Okay, so I'm getting off on my theology tip right now, but let's go back. Let's go back under the sea. My unique Monique says, sorry, I'm not paying too much attention to the chat, so I got to keep looking back up there. So then sin corrupted these animals' minds to make them create these insane ways to procreate and survive. Just doesn't make sense. It's a wild thing to have to. This is what I meant when I said the story that the Bible is telling. If you have to try to put all of our experiences into that story, it doesn't fit. You have to block out so much of the experience of planet Earth, let alone what's happening light years away from here. You have to block all that stuff out to make the experience fit into the story the Bible's telling. Michael Apple says, an additional issue is when did this happen? Of course, because if you try to use the 6,000 years ago, I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're talking about, Michael, but if you use a biblical timeline, the biblical timeline is too recent to explain why any of these things would be happening, because we have fossils and evidence of all of this stuff happening for millennia before anything like a human would have been on the scene. So you can't really blame sin for any of this stuff. You have to lay it at the feet of the God of the Bible and say, so then you just designed it this way? Why? Like, what the? Okay, so that being the case, now I can finally get to start playing some videos. And like I said, I don't have all the videos I want to play. I want to. So the few videos that I was able to convert, it's a lot of cephalopods. So if you don't like cephalopods, I'm utterly fascinated by cephalopods. So you're about to see a lot of cephalopods. I'm just warning you. Okay. Um, graphic here. I'm just awed by this. When I was a Christian, I used to watch these kinds of things and I would praise God so hard for this. Like the fact that this octopus has the ability to do this, to camouflage itself, to get next to something and decide, I want to look like you. And if you know anything about cephalopods, all the different things that they have to do to pull off this camouflage trick, right? It's amazing. But it's not just like they're doing this to amaze you and me. They didn't say, "Oh, I want to make TransView praise God one day, so let me learn how to do this." Like, no, this is survival. These, I was going to say creatures. What can I call them if I can't call them creatures? Beings, animals. They learned early on. These things go back ages. They learned early on. They're uber intelligent. They've got 8 brains, right? All their arms contain their own brain. They learned early on. I don't know how. Like, even as I'm saying this, I think there's the old Christian in me is like, come on, really? You mean to tell me that these things just learn how to do this on their own? Like, God didn't design this? But this is evolution. This is survival. These things learn that I can survive. I can reflect my surroundings, and that will keep a predator from preying on me. And they perfect this. Unbelievable. Here goes the real question, in light of what we're talking about. Why did these things have to learn to do this? Well, they had to learn to do this because something was preying on them, right? Bigger fish, sharks, something was trying to devour them, and they had to, out of fear, they learned to do this. Now, here goes another concept that blew me away very recently. Like a lot of the things I'm talking about, like as I've been studying these things, I'm having revelations and I'm learning like, oh, it's the term closest living ancestor is very important. Because when you think about humans and chimpanzees, right? Human and chimpanzees, we're each other's closest living relative. But when you say closest living relative, what you're really saying is if humans are here and chimpanzees are here, we're each other's closest living relatives. What you're saying is that there's a bunch of other relatives that would have been closer that would explain the gap. Like you look at a chimpanzee and a human, you say, how are they going to be related? But if you don't take into account what closest living means, you would leave out the fact that there's all these other relatives in between that would show you the gradation between chimp, and human. If the other relatives are no longer living and they haven't left fossils, you can't really see the gradation of how you go from here to here. All you can do is look at the genome and see, oh, look how close they are. There's a lot missing in that living relative thing. You don't have the living relatives anymore. It's just we're each other's closest living. There's some others that aren't in the fossil. I say that to say, you look at an octopus and you think, man, look how weird or unique or how special that thing is. If you were able to see all of the relatives, not just the closest living ones, all the relatives that haven't made it into the fossil record, you'd be able to see how close and how far we were from something like that. As opposed to looking at them and say, I think they're aliens because nothing else on the planet can do that. Something else on the planet was probably a lot closer than we ever would imagine. They're not living, and they didn't leave us much of a record. All right, so look, as amazing as these things are, they had to become this amazing because other living things were trying to use them for energy. Other living things were preying on them, and this was the way that they found to survive. All right. Another cephalopod. Here's what I mean. So it's not just the camouflage. These cuttlefish, they have this ability to just squirt this ink into the water, and their prey gets confused. Like, I know I'm chasing this blobbish looking thing. The prey gets confused and starts going after the ink instead of the cuttlefish. But you're about to watch this one here, not just squirt the ink, but also camouflage. Watch this. That's insane. Did you see, did you see the look on the fish's face? You tell me if you think I'm seeing things. It's almost like the fish was like, "What the fuck?" Like, you see the shock on the fish's face when the cuttlefish just says, "All right, if you're not going to bite on the ink, let me just go ahead and confuse you." Watch. Insane. Insane. Like, as amazing as this animal, sea creature is, like, how was I praising God that this animal was able to do something like this, but the same God that I'm praising had rigged it that the animal needed to do that because it was going to be prey for other animals? Like, am I praising what? Why? Like, shouldn't I be a little? I don't know what emotion I should have for the God that I'm on one hand, I'm giving credit for making it, but at the same time, I'm like, but you made it susceptible to being devout. Like, how does that work? How am I giving God credit without also at the same time giving God blame? Like, how do you do that? All right, more under the sea. Just in case you're thinking like, oh man, it's a shame that these beautiful, amazing cuttlefish and cephalopods, it's a shame that they're being devoured by these other creatures. Well, don't feel too bad for them because they're not just prey, they're also predators. And if you need proof of that, So then what do here? Do I praise God because, hey, this amazing jaw-dropping creature is getting the food that it needs to provide? I mean, to survive? Or do I say, like, no, like, why am I praising God for its ability to devour other living things? Like, in the same way that I wanted to have a heart for the cuttlefish, like, oh, it shouldn't be prey for other creatures. It's also preying on creatures. It's got this ability to camouflage, not just to protect itself from predators, but to prey on other things. I don't know. It just seems like it makes more sense rather than trying to praise some divine, good, all-knowing being of nature to say, wow, like, this is life. This is what the universe is doing locally here. Who knows what it's doing elsewhere? This is just how it gets down. This is just how it goes. And I can respect it. I want to be prey, like I'm a predator. But I'm sort of grateful that I am where I am in the food chain. This is just how it goes. James says, I've thought about that too, bro. The whole complexity of the eye as a marvel of design. If it is, it's a design that is necessary for predator and prey. Otherwise, we would be the only ones with them. Yeah, it's like you're forced to praise and ponder at the same time. It just seems like the way we've developed, if you don't want to use the term evolve, the way we've developed just happens to be excellent for predation. And predation just seems like it goes so much better with naturalism than it does with theism. How do you reconcile theism with predation? How do you reconcile, I'm going to get the energy I need by causing you pain? How do you reconcile that with goodness, justice, love? But a few more. Who's next? I just thought this was interesting. This one won't hurt your heart as much. This shows you basically speciesism at work, because the other videos don't use I don't know if anybody's going to understand. Man, algae, let me see it. How can it be that? Why not? Well, even though it's alive, what it happens to be is alive, I can empathize with that. We tend to have if we just saw trees breathing, like if they had the movement that we associate with breathing, I think we'd have a lot more empathy for trees or grass. But because they don't do anything that we recognize as, oh, I do that too. Now, granted, they do breathe. We don't recognize how they do it. But because we don't recognize, at least even though we have and so because it's doing something that we recognize, oh, a little bit of empathy, a little bit. That's just the thing. That's cut out when I'm running the video. So somebody else talk to me. When I'm showing the video, is the mic completely out? Because I was doing a whole lot of talking while the videos were playing. Oh, damn. Wow, this entire time, all this talking I was doing. All right, so this really was just a nature show for most of this time. Okay, the water sound was overpowering the voice. So some of the other videos, it wasn't that bad, I'm guessing. Okay, damn. Well, you live and you learn. But the mic is still good when I'm not playing the video, right? All right. I apologize for that, y'all. Should have done a mic check to see what was going on with that. So I won't talk over the videos. If you couldn't hear what I was saying, all I was saying was basically we recognize the crab as something similar to us because it's doing something we recognize. It's feeding itself. We don't typically have empathy for plants. Even though plants are alive, plants aren't doing things that we recognize as, oh, we do that too, right? Plants are breathing, but if we could just see plants like inhale and exhale, we could see trees just have the movement when they're breathing, we'd have a little more empathy towards them. But because they don't, we don't. So you watch a crab eating those leaves and you're like, oh, good for the crab. You don't feel bad for the leaves because you don't have empathy for them. Even though we boil crabs, if you know your crab is boiled, it doesn't bother you as much. If you watch your crab get boiled, something in you, I would think, something in you was like, damn, this is crazy. Like this, like they're not going to come arrest me for this. Like this is crazy. Because you recognize something, even though the crab is a crab, the fact that it's sitting there trying to feed itself, you're like, oh, I do that too. And that's speciesism, right? We prize species that do things like we do them. And the more like us they are, and we're going to see this when I get to the land mammals, the more like us they are, the more we're like, oh, okay, I got a heart for that. Well, that's speciesism, right? That's us prizing ourselves over other species and prizing species that get close to being like us. Well, that being the case, next video. If you ever felt bad for octopus, don't feel too bad. This is a small shark that this octopus is like, yo, come here, let me see what you taste like. And then here's the funny thing about this video to me. You even see other fish pull up like, oh, that's what we doing? We eating shark now? I don't know if they're like trying to get a taste or if they just like are spectating like they came for the show. But watch the fish right around here. Watch the fish start pulling up like, I want to see what's about to happen here. You think about fish as mindless or as like, oh, they don't really have sensibility. These fish seem like they know what's good, like they know what's going on. Yeah, that fish right there, he's not just spectating. He pulled up and started nibbling on the crab. I mean, on the shark. Like, All I'm asking with these videos is this God's bright idea? Did sin cause this, or did God say, you know what I want? I want an ocean filled with things that eat each other. And if you ever watch these creatures in the sea, if you think they were created, I keep checking myself when I say that, because I'm trying to get out of the habit of calling them creatures, and I want you to get out of the habit of referring to them as creatures, because by calling them creatures, what you're saying intuitively is God. By calling them creatures, you're saying that they were created. But these beings in the sea, these animals in the sea, like, did a God really sit back and say, I want an ocean full of things that eat each other? And if you ever watch them, you see them trying to evade capture. You see them trying to evade the mouths of other, I'm going to call them creatures for the sake of this, because I'm trying to use an outsider test of faith here just to see. Let's put it through the grid of the Bible. If they are creatures, a creator was like, yeah, I want them eating each other. Like, what does this do for God? What does it do for a God to say, that's going to give me glory? Like, you get into the New Testament and you see Paul, or whoever's pretending to be Paul, you see them talking about God doing all these things to the praise of his glory. How does it glorify God to make creatures that don't want to be eaten, that come up with all kind of ways to avoid being eaten, and yet still end up falling prey, and so they're eaten? How does that glorify God? You do have verses in the Bible that talk about God providing for these animals. He makes sure that they're fed with other animals. I don't know how I let that slip when I was a believer. Like, how does that glorify God? And I think the way I did it was I used sin. Because of sin, God was somehow okay with them getting what they need to survive by eating other creatures. I don't know what it would have done to my worldview if I had to factor in, no, they were doing this before mankind was even around. That probably would have fucked me up a little bit if I was a Christian and had to think about that. I don't know. All right, just a few more. I'm gonna try to keep this under an hour for the night. Um, I love this video right here. You probably saw me share this on Facebook probably about 2 years ago. I've always wanted to give commentary on this. Watch it again. What you're looking at is two male crabs fighting over a female crab. And one of them picks her up and starts running away with her. And the other one is like, yo, bring her back. When I saw this, I thought to myself, like, yo, are they really doing anything different than what we're doing? Like, granted, they don't drive cars, they don't build buildings, they don't, build statues of other crabs that did great things. But, like, really, what are they doing in essence that we don't do? I thought about what is it? Troy, right? Thought about Iliad and the Odyssey. I thought about stories of the Greeks going to fight this war for Helen of Troy because somebody stole Agamemnon's wife. Like, and you're going to sail across the ocean with 1,000 ships to go get her back or start this war. I'm like, yo, I mean, just look at it. Like, you probably know people that you're like, yo, that's my man so and so, and that's so and so. What is she thinking? What is the crab that's in possession, the female crab? What is she thinking while this is going on? Like, does she have a say in the matter? Is this the crabs at their caveman period of their history where you would hit the woman on the head and drag her off to your cave? Like what's going on here? And in God's great design, like if God is responsible for their behavior, did God design them to function this way? Did God design male crabs to fight over female crabs and to carry them away while somebody's in hot pursuit? Or is this just nature? Is this just lifing? Is this just chemistry becoming biology? And that biology is just trying to figure out ways to prolong itself. And one of those ways that it prolongs itself is by eating to get the energy. Another way is, oh, shoot, if I can't keep doing this, I'm going to make an offspring to do it. I'm going to make a copy of myself, and I'm going to combine with another crab, just like the story of naturalism. Though we don't know all the answers to all the questions, we don't know all the ins and outs, we don't know all the whys and but the idea that there's something supernatural going on, it seems to strain credulity when you have to try to fit it into the narrative. Maybe if the narrative was different, maybe the idea of a deity would work. But the fact that it's the narrative that we have in the Bible, like this doesn't seem to fit that. All right, coming to the end of the slideshow here. There we go. So here you got a group of watchers on a boat. They see a bird coming to touch down on the water, like, oh, I wonder if the bird's going to come to the boat. Let's see. Will the bird come to the boat? Uh-oh. He's coming back to the bird. So they wanted the bird to come to the boat. The bird is just messing around, and then something in the water starts harassing the bird, and like, yo, what's going on?
Okay. What is he from?
Got him. It's gonna get him. Oh! Sorry, you probably weren't expecting that if you didn't see this before, and maybe I should have warned you. But I wanted you, if you've never seen that before, I wanted you to have the same shock that the bird had. Now, granted, your shock is probably a lot less palpable because you weren't being chomped on just now. But imagine you're just a bird, just chilling. You see a boat full of people who are like, hey, little birdie. James said, I knew it. Trev, you said that bird is dinner. Y'all just knew what was going to happen. But here you are, just like, imagine the bone you would have to pick with Adam and Eve if sin is the reason why this happened to you. Or if you can't blame Adam and Eve, Trev, you said turf and surf. If you can't blame Adam and Eve, you know what you got to do? You can't turn to Adam and Eve. You know who you turn to? You turn to God. Like, wait, you designed this. You made it so that this shark is hungry enough and thinks it's okay to come up out of the water and make me dinner. Like, how do you praise God? Let everything that have breath praise the Lord. For what? Praise him for what? Oh. So when we get to the land mammals, there's a few videos I'm going to play where you're going to see people reacting to what's happening to these animals. And what I'm going to challenge you to do is to juxtapose what the people are saying versus what God must be saying. Like, you hear the people's shock and maybe disgust or whatever they like. Do you think God, aside from God being all-knowing, because if God is all-knowing, he knew it was going to happen, but you hear the people's reaction to this happening, what do you think forget the all-knowing part, an all good, all-powerful God's reaction is to the shark eating this bird? Do you think God is as appalled as the people? Or do you think that aside from jeers, do you think maybe that in heaven there are cheers, like, yay, like the shark got the meal it needed? What's happening in heaven?
Just want to get him. Oh! 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 Oh!
Does God share their sentiment? All right, this is the last one I'm going to play. There's a Deadpool. All right, here goes the last one I'm going to play. Let me see. Oh, no, sorry, two more. So sea turtles find a jellyfish and just decide, I'm going to take a bite out of crime. Look at the jellyfish just gracefully just doing this little jelly dance in the water, like not bothering nobody. And then not just one sea turtle, the other one's like, oh, that's what we're doing? How'd that taste? Let me get some. And they just went on about their business. Like, if we do that, it's sin. Do you think God holds animals accountable for eating each other? Like, what part of the biblical story addresses why it's wrong for us to harm each other as humans, but then the animals, now they can have at it? And the part of the answer for the Christian is no, because we're made in the image of God. Like the Bible says, any man who kills man, by man shall his blood be shed. Why? Because man was made in the image of God. So by hurting another human, you're defacing the image of God. That's why it's wrong for us to do it. So outside of that, basically, if you're going to use that as your justification for why, or not your justification, your criminalization of why you can't hurt humans like you can hurt animals, because we're made in the image of God. Yet meanwhile, the animals who aren't made in God's image, it's perfectly fine to hurt, to hunt, to maim, to eat them, and for them to do it to each other. And God, in his vast power and omniscience and his world of resources in terms of what he could create and how he could create, just figured that this would be a good way to make a world where things are consuming each other. So here goes the last video we're going to do. And this one's a little involved because the setup for this is I was going to say delicious, but that might be too much of a pun. So let's just get to it. I'm going to dive in around here. maybe you needed a trigger warning. If crabs and lots of crabs is somehow triggering to you, you might want to look away.
Clamber over one another. Creating great mounds. Nearly 100 meters long.
Anybody out there, you would be like kind of creeped out if you were around something like this? Like, do you get like the heebie-jeebies? I don't, but I could imagine and understand why somebody would get the heebie-jeebies looking at something like this.
They're not seeking mates, neither are they laying eggs. They have come here in order to grow. Like all crabs, their bodies are enclosed in a hard, unexpandable shell. So, to grow, they have to break out of it.
So one thing to keep in mind, these crabs have to do this. They don't have a choice. As they're growing, their hard shell can't contain them anymore, and so they have to get out of that shell. And so they all migrate together in this huge pile. They go to this one specific place that they like to go to. They go here just to molt, just to get out of one shell and get into a new one. Grow a new one, not find it. They have to grow a new one.
And that allows the soft one that has developed beneath to expand. It will take days for the new shell to harden.
Now, once again, as a Christian, I would have been praising God, like, oh my God, he's so magnificent. Look, he made these creatures, and he knew that they were going to need a new shell, so he made it so that the old one would fall off, and then the soft one underneath, once the old one is off, the soft one can now expand and then harden, and I would praise God.
Its legs are so limp that they won't work properly. The crab is unprotected and in great danger.
So I'm used to walking around in a shell, a hard shell that covers my body and my legs. Once I molt from this hard shell, I don't have those hard shell legs anymore. So my legs are so fluid, so limp, I can't walk. So I've lost two forms of protection. One, the hard shell. Two, hard legs that will allow me to get around. So I've got no shell to cover me, and I can't maneuver. I'm a sitting duck. No, I'm a sitting crab at this point. Now remember, I was praising God for this. I didn't know I was praising God for putting them in this position where now they're without protection.
A smooth stingray. It's huge, about 4 meters long. It wants a soft, freshly molted crab that will be easier to eat. The crabs try to stick together. But now, disturbed by the ray, they're scattering. A newly molted crab is too weak to keep up with the crowd.
So you get the point. God in his wisdom made it. Tramp, you said all he can eat crab. And like God in his wisdom made it so that these crabs have to molt, not choose to, have to molt to grow. And while molting, they're unprotected and they're immobile. Along comes a stingray, not looking for the hard shell crab. He likes that soft shell crab, and says, that's exactly what I was looking for. You, come here. You can't go nowhere. I don't have to work too hard to get you out of that shell. Perfect. God in his wisdom, or man in his sin caused it. Either way, there is an untenable explanation for the suffering of these creatures. It doesn't do justice to the story that we're telling or to the experience that we see on planet Earth. The narrative cannot talk about needing a new shell. The narrative is too small and too hard of a shell to fit the experience of planet Earth into it. We need to outgrow that story. And like I said at the beginning, maybe if you're not a fundamentalist, you feel like you already have outgrown that. You don't go to the Bible to understand death anymore, or understand pain anymore. You just look at it as it was God trying to communicate his heart for humanity. And so you just get the big themes out of the Bible, that man is special amongst all the creatures, that something happened back towards the beginning that caused a rift, but you don't really go to the story for details anymore. And maybe you never thought about this stuff the way you're thinking about it now in light of these episodes, but maybe you want to add that into your progression as a Christian, that now you need something to explain why animals can suffer and die the way that they do in animal predation. You have to add this into the Bible's too small to be the shell to explain this. Well, like I said at the beginning, whether it be psychology, whether it be human sexuality, whether it be morality, there's all sorts of reasons why we need to outgrow the Bible. And it's weird because we live in a world where, who was it? Was it Mike Huckabee? Is Mike Huckabee the one who's the U.S. ambassador to Israel? I forget who it is, but I think it's Mike Huckabee. The U.S. ambassador to Israel just put out a message. Matter of fact, I think I have it here. Listen to this. I didn't plan on saying this, but this helps to explain why we need to outgrow religion. Yep, it was Mike Huckabee. So here's what Mike Huckabee posted, talking to Donald Trump about the war that's breaking out in Iran, between Iran and Israel right now. Huckabee says, Mr. President, God spared you in Butler, Pennsylvania. Remember when Trump was almost assassinated, if you believe that he was almost assassinated. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm just saying if you do. Mr. President, God spared you in Butler, PA, to be the most consequential president in a century, maybe ever. Now, I actually would agree that he's one of the most consequential presidents ever. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I think the consequences are terrible, but he's probably one of the most consequential presidents ever. But maybe Huckabee is sort of using words that can be taken either way because he thinks that the consequences are negative too. But listen to what he says here. The decisions on your shoulders, I would not want to be. So no, he's not trying to like say two things at once. He's saying one thing here. He's flowering Trump for sure. The decisions on your shoulders, I would not want to be made by anyone else You want this guy making the child who can't speak without insulting people? You want him making these decisions? Yeah, okay. The decisions on your shoulders, I would not want to be made by anyone else. You have many voices speaking to you, sir, but there is only one, capital O-N-E. There is only one voice that matters. His voice, capital H-I-S, his voice. These are world leaders, world leaders who are saying they can't make decisions that are going to affect millions upon millions of people without his voice speaking. The God who in his wisdom thought it was cool to make creatures that have to devour each other to get the source of energy that they need. You think that his voice is the voice that matters when millions upon millions of lives are on the line. Really? We're trusting our future, our economy, our health, our well-being, our world to people who are appealing to this God. For so many reasons, we need to outgrow religion as the way we find out what's good, as the way we find out where the world should be headed. Is there anything else he says in this post? I just really wanted to read that part. He says a bunch of more like sycophantic bullshit in here. But I'm just saying that to say, I think anything you can do. I think we're past that stage of live and let live. If you just want to let people be religious and that's fine for them, hey, live and let live. Okay, cool. But here's what I can tell you. We would not be where we are right now without religion, in terms of this man being the leader of the free world. We would not be here without religion. If for no other reason, even if everything else religion did was cool, if for no other reason, this is enough to lend your voice, to lend your steam to the conversation about whether or not we need to keep specifically this religion around. And specifically the version of it that sees, I don't even know how I want to say this because I don't want to offend anybody. The version of it that tries to take the Bible as literal as evangelicals try to take it. I'm not trying to say that you need to be a warrior, a keyboard warrior, start a YouTube channel, or anything. I'm just saying if you're not having conversations with people around you about how dangerous it is to take this book and try to use it as our roadmap. If you're not educating yourself, like you might be thinking, I don't even know how to have those kinds of conversations. What if I bring up evolution and then they say this? There's so many channels out here that are helping people to educate themselves on how to at least have conversations that make people say, okay, even if I'm not going to deconstruct or deconvert, I need to take it a little less literally. I think anything that you can do toward that end is humanitarian. And I think this is the time for that. Like, that's what the moment calls for. That's activism in this day and age. Because we're about to go to war. We're about to enter into a war in the Middle East. And the people who are cheering it on are largely Christians who think it's their duty because God gave Israel that land, and anything they have to do to justify it is justifiable. I'm not going to go too much further down that road because there's so much more we could say. I'm going to end it there. Any comments or questions that you guys have, throw them in the chat. Other than that, I have Jewish apple cake waiting for me. So no super chats, nothing I got to read. James said, gotta bounce. Later, fan. Preach, be good. That's what's up. I'm only hanging around in case anybody has any questions or comments about anything other than that. we wrapping. Oh, let me say this too. This Thursday, I'll be doing a special Juneteenth show. I'm going to be bringing Crystal W back on, and we're going to. I think I have a great conversation to have about being free. That's all I'm going to say. So come back Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern for the Juneteenth show. All right. Monique says good stuff tonight. That's what's up, y'all. And somebody, I think it was you, Monique, you said there's a lot of other shows on in the evening, so it'd be better for me to keep it during the day. I wonder to what degree we were seeing that in the low live viewer numbers tonight. But yeah, either way, we're going to test out the evening shows on Monday and Tuesday for a few weeks, if not for the summer, to see how that goes. And if it doesn't bode well, then they'll be back on the daytime, or we'll figure something else out. But it's all a exercise and experiment here. All right, y'all, go ahead and enjoy the rest of yours. I'm going to enjoy the rest of mine. I'll talk with y'all next time. Love to you. Peace.